So what does the Speaker's race mean for policy going forward? And does this uncertainty in Congress increase the chances of a government shutdown next month? Brian Gardner is Chief Washington Policy Strategist at Stifel. Brian, welcome. Good to have you with us. What is the possibility that Democrats are going to long for the days of Kevin McCarthy?
On any given issue, probably a fair amount. Certainly on Ukraine funding. I think whoever wins the Speaker's race among Republicans is going to have to be very cautious on Ukraine funding going forward. And so it's a popular issue among Democrats, but they might be in a tougher position going forward on Ukraine funding. So, and, there are other issues where, the two sides have never agreed, but the extractions that are going to be, the concessions that are going to be made in negotiations of securing the speakership may not be to the liking of House Democrats.
No, I think not. I think of this situation rather like a parliamentary system of government where a majority party puts together a coalition that may include some strange bedfellows or some fractious elements. And then those fractious elements really have control over the majority party. Is that not the case in this case, where you have 8 or 10 or 12 members who are able to, given the slimness of the majority, are able to sort of set the agenda, call the tune for, quote, the majority?
Yeah, let me put it in a slightly different context, Tyler. So it's a lot like college football that we've just seen, right? The Pac-12, Speaker McCarthy's area, just disintegrated. And so now we have really the main competition between the Big Ten, Jim Jordan, who's going to run, and the SEC, Steve Scalise, is going to run. The Big 12 is trying to get involved. And then not so much the 8 that you were mentioning. I'm going to call out a group of moderate Republicans from the Northeast that's not exactly a hotbed of college football, but they could be determining who the next national champion is. So, I think those moderates may have taken some lessons, taken a page out of the playbook of Congressman Gates and company. And they're the ones that, if they choose to use that leverage, can determine the outcome of the speaker's race and the agenda going forward. Once Gates goes down that road, everybody can play that game.
And so what I'm hearing you say then is that maybe there are Northeastern Republicans of a more moderate stripe than Gates and Good and some of the others who are part of that gang of 8 or so, that they may say, oh, not so fast, guys. We have the power of veto too here. And Absolutely. You're going to have to come up with somebody who's acceptable to us.
The current House majority is about 4 members for the Republicans, depending on how many vacancies there are. Those 4 are built on the state of New York, where New York Republicans did unexpectedly well in the last. Those are the people that have outsized influence in the next speaker's race, if they choose to use it, and I think they will.
Isn't this rather like the situation with the Democrats, where 2 members, Kristen Sinema and Joe Manchin, have effectively that same veto power of what can get done in the Senate?
Yes, I think it's a great comparison, Tyler. Very in small majorities, small groups of members in each body have outsized influence, and I think that's what we have been seeing really for going back to since the election of President Biden with Senate Democrats and now with House Republicans.
Brian, what would you say that McCarthy's missteps were here, going maybe all the way back to January, and what lessons should the next speaker draw from that?
It's easy to second guess and criticize. I think a lot of people are pointing to the deal that he made with Congressman Getz and others about the procedures about removing a speaker.
Right.
But government is compromise. It's dirty. It's a dirty exercise. It's a hard exercise. And that compromise was necessary for him to get the speaker's gavel. And if he didn't make that deal, somebody else would have. And so we'd still be in this situation. I think a little bit more outreach to Democrats, maybe just toning down the rhetoric a little bit, could have saved him. But again, this is a lot of second guessing, a lot of, rear view mirror driving. I think given given the circumstances, with divided government and a very small majority, and a minority within the majority that's willing to torture the speaker, I think at the end of the day, Kevin McCarthy did pretty well.
Given the fact that government shutdown looms in 6 weeks or thereabouts, is it more likely now that there will be a shutdown than there would have been had McCarthy prevailed?
Probably. I mean, so, just the time that the House is going to take to pick a new speaker, that's at least a week, maybe longer, depending on how long the process goes on. So that's time that's not going to be spent passing appropriations bills. And then we'll get to November 17th, and the decision will have to be made again. Are you going to shut down the government, or are you going to do another continuing resolution? And we see how popular CRs are among conservative Republicans. So a new speaker is going to find himself in a very difficult situation right off the bat.
All right, Brian, thank you very much. As always, great to see you. Brian Gardner.
Thank you, guys.